The year is 15,000 BC. You are standing in the heart of the East European plain, somewhere in what is today Ukraine. It is the deep of winter during the last glacial maximum. The sun here is a ghost. It hugs the horizon for 4 short hours before plunging the world back into a crippling, 20-hour darkness. The air temperature hovers at a steady 35 degrees below zero. But the temperature isn't the true killer. It's the wind. There are no trees here to break the gale. There are no caves to crawl into. This is the Mammoth Steppe, a vast, frozen grassland that stretches from Spain to Siberia. It is an ecosystem that supports the largest land mammals on Earth, but for a human being without shelter, it is a death sentence. In these conditions, hypothermia sets in within minutes. If you cannot get out of the wind, your body will simply shut down. And here lies the great paradox of the Ice Age survivalist. To survive, you need a fortress. You need a home capable of withstanding hurricane-force blizzards and retaining heat against the vacuum of the Arctic night. But look around you. There is no timber to build a log cabin. There is no clay for bricks. There are no limestone caves in this flat river valley. The landscape offers absolutely nothing to build with. It is a desert of ice. So, how is it possible that in this exact spot, archaeologists found not just a campsite, but a village? How did our ancestors, equipped with nothing but stone tools and their own wits, construct complex, warm, permanent dwellings in a place that offered zero building materials? The answer forces us to rethink everything we know about primitive man. They didn't just survive the Ice Age, they engineered their way through it. They looked at the giants roaming the plains, the woolly mammoths, and they didn't just see food. They saw bricks. They saw beams. They saw a future. Today, on the frostbitten past, we are stepping inside the Mammoth Bone House. We need to start by destroying a myth that has plagued history books for a century. When we say, Ice Age, you likely picture a hairy, hunched figure huddled in a damp cave, gnawing on a raw bone, terrified of the world outside. We tend to view our ancestors from this period as reactive, scavengers who were barely clinging to life. This image is not just insulting, it is scientifically wrong. The people who inhabited the Dnepr and Desna river valleys 15 millennia ago, cultures archaeologists refer to as the Epigravettian, were nothing like that stereotype. They were anatomically modern humans. Their brains were identical to yours. They possessed complex language, abstract art, and a social structure that could organize labor on a massive scale. They were not hiding in holes. They were the masters of their domain. To live on the open steppe required a level of planning and logistical genius that rivals modern Arctic expeditions. They couldn't afford to be reactive. If they reacted to the cold, they were already dead. They had to be proactive. The structures we are about to investigate are not temporary tents. They are not hastily thrown together huts. They are examples of monumental architecture. They required tons of raw materials, months of construction, and an understanding of physics, load distribution, and thermal insulation that would be impressive for a modern engineer. This is the story of how humanity turned the skeleton of the beast into the cradle of civilization. The revelation began quietly. For decades, farmers in the village of MEZHIRICH, Ukraine, about 90 miles south of Kiev, would occasionally hit something hard with their plows. They found massive bones, too big for a cow, too big for a horse. They called them dragon bones. But in 1965, a local farmer decided to expand his cellar. 6 feet down, his shovel didn't just hit a bone, it hit a wall. Paleontologists and archaeologists rushed to the site. What they uncovered at MEZHIRICH sent shockwaves through the scientific community. As they brushed away the loose soil, a pattern emerged. These weren't random bones scattered by a predator. They were stacked. They uncovered the first of 4 dwellings. Then, they found similar structures at other sites, Kostenki in Russia, Mizin and Dobranichivka in Ukraine. The scale of the discovery is hard to wrap your head around. Let's look at the inventory for just one of these houses at Mezhirich. The structure is roughly circular, about 20 feet in diameter. To build it, the architects used the remains of 95 individual mammoths. Let me repeat that. 95 mammoths. The total weight of the bone used in a single dwelling exceeds 20 tons. We are talking about hundreds of mandibles, lower jaws, dozens of skulls, and thousands of long bones. And the crucial piece of evidence that proved these were built structures. The order. The bones weren't mixed up. The builders had sorted them. They had created piles of left femurs, piles of right femurs, piles of shoulder blades, and piles of jaws. They treated the mammoth skeletons not as biological remains, but as a hardware store inventory. The archaeologists realized they weren't looking at a kill site. They were standing in the middle of a prehistoric construction zone. How do you build a 20-ton bone mansion? Let's reverse engineer the process. The first question is logistical: where do you get 95 mammoths? Early theories suggested these people were super hunters, slaughtering herds specifically for construction. But modern analysis of the bones tells a different story. Many of the bones show signs of weathering that occurred before they were put into the walls. This implies they had been lying on the ground for years. The current consensus is that these builders were harvesting mammoth graveyards, natural accumulation spots in river valleys where herds would pass through and animals would die over centuries. Imagine the labor. Even if you find the bones, you have to move them. A wet, fresh mammoth skull can weigh over 200 pounds. A femur is a solid column of calcium heavy enough to crush a foot. They had to transport tons of material, likely miles from the collection source to the village site. They would have used the winter snow to their advantage, loading sleds and hauling the timber across the ice. This suggests a highly organized workforce, likely involving the entire community. Once on site, the construction begins. The builders started by digging a circular pit into the permafrost, about 2 to 3 feet deep. This semi-subterranean design is crucial. It uses the earth itself as insulation. Then came the foundation. At Mezhirich, the builders used the heaviest, most geometrically complex bones, the skulls. They flipped the massive craniums upside down or nose down, burying the face in the earth to create a solid, immovable ring. Above the skulls, they built the walls. This is where the genius of the Epigravettian architects shines. They didn't just stack bones randomly. They utilized the specific shape of the mammoth mandible to create an interlocking system. The lower jaw of a mammoth is V-shaped. By stacking them chin down, nestled into one another, they created a herringbone pattern. This isn't just aesthetic, it's structural. This interlocking weave provides lateral stability, preventing the wall from collapsing outward or inward. They filled the gaps with heavy earth and clay, acting as mortar. At the site of Mizin, they used a different technique, stacking long leg bones horizontally, log cabin style, held in place by vertical stakes driven into the ground. Each tribe, it seems, had its own architectural style. The walls are up. But now you face the hardest problem in prehistoric engineering, the roof. How do you span a 20-foot wide room without a single wooden beam? A stone roof would be too heavy, a flat bone roof would collapse. The solution was the arch. The builders utilized the mammoth tusks. A tusk is essentially a pre-curved structural beam. By setting the base of the tusks into the tops of the walls and lashing them together at the apex, they created a domed framework. But a skeleton doesn't keep out the wind. The final layer was the skin. It is estimated that dozens of mammoth hides, thick, heavy, and processed, were stitched together to create a massive tarp. This was draped over the tusk frame. Finally, to seal the deal, they likely covered the hides with sod, moss, and snow. This created a composite wall system. 1. The bone, thermal mass. 2. The hide, windbreak. 3. The earth, insulation. This design is strikingly similar to the Inuit igloo or the historic varying Yaranga of the Chukchi people. It is aerodynamic. When the blizzards of the steppe hit this dome, the wind doesn't smash against a flat wall, it flows over the curve, pressing the structure firmer into the ground. Step inside. The wind is howling outside, screaming across the steppe, but in here, the silence is heavy. The air is thick with the smell of burning fat and cured leather. It is warm. The central hearth is the heart of the home. But look closely at the fire. There is no wood. They are burning bone. Fresh, green bone, rich in oily marrow, burns hot and slow. It takes a high heat to get it started, likely using dried dung or scrub brush, but once lit, a mammoth bone fire acts like a coal furnace, radiating intense heat for hours. This space wasn't just a bunker, it was a home. At Mizhin, archaeologists found mammoth scapulae, shoulder blades, painted with red ochre in geometric, zigzag patterns. These were the first wallpapers in history. They found musical instruments, flutes made of bird bone, and a set of painted mammoth bones that show where marks suggesting they were used as percussion instruments, a prehistoric drum set. Imagine the scene: 20 people, extended families, huddled together during the long polar night. The elders recounting the oral histories of the tribe while the percussionist beats a rhythm on the bones of the very animal that protects them. This required a profound shift in human society. To build these houses meant settling down. You don't build a 20-ton house if you plan to leave in a week. These people were semi-sedentary. They had storage pits dug into the permafrost, primitive freezers, where they stored meat to last the winter. This stability allowed for the development of specialized roles. Not everyone had to hunt every day. Some could focus on sewing the intricate clothing needed to survive. Others could focus on tool making. Others, on art. The security provided by the bone house allowed culture to bloom in the wasteland. The Mammoth Bone House disappeared as the Ice Age ended. As the climate warmed and the forests returned, humans went back to building with wood. The mammoths vanished, and the bone villages were reclaimed by the earth. But the legacy of the Mezhirich builders remains relevant today. In the world of modern architecture and sustainable design, we talk about vernacular architecture, building with what is locally available to suit the local climate. The Epigravettian hunters were the ultimate vernacular architects. They didn't fight the environment, they used it. They understood the principles of thermal mass and aerodynamics long before we had mathematical formulas for them. When NASA plans habitats for Mars, they look at similar principles. How do we use the local regolith, soil, to build protective domes against a hostile environment? The physics that kept a family alive in 15,000 BC are the same physics that will keep astronauts alive on T. We are not so different from them. We share the same drive, to carve out a safe space in a chaotic universe. To make a home where there shouldn't be one. The hunters of the Mammoth Steppe didn't just survive the Ice Age, they tamed it. They took the skeletons of giants and built cathedrals of survival. They turned the most inhospitable environment on Earth into a place of art, music, and community. They prove that human ingenuity is not a modern invention. It is our oldest trait. When the world freezes over, we don't just endure. We build. But a warm house is only half the battle. Eventually, you have to open the door. You have to step out into the -40-degree wind to hunt, to gather, to travel. Your skin freezes in seconds. Your eyes water and seal shut with ice. How did these people move through the blizzard? In the next episode of the Frostbitten Past, we are going to deconstruct the Ice Age spacesuit. We will examine the microscopic evidence of eyed needles and tailored clothing that proves our ancestors were wearing multi-layered, waterproof, thermal gear that rivals the best modern parkas. You won't want to miss that. Hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. Until next time, stay frosty.